after delivering a petition to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission.
But the march was also supported by the National Patriotic Front of former President Robert Mugabe loyalists who maintain he is democratic.
Throwing a spanner in the works, the July 30 date for Zimbabwe elections looked all but set, but the opposition, supported by thousands, says the Electoral Commission is not ready.
We are happy with the crowd, a fantastic crowd, much more than any crowd ever before.
The march was demanding a range of electoral requirements and reforms, including that the Electoral Commission make the voters' roll public before the poll. In the process, the MDC has attracted strange alliances, a party formed by former President Robert Mugabe's loyalists.
President Mugabe, as an individual, is a very democratic individual. You heard his interview that he was going to support any democratic process that would deal with the coup that we had on November 15.
NPF believes the issues being raised by MDC are substantial.
You can't have a level playing field when you have the junta in control. These are people that subverted the constitution last year in November. We are mobilizing people, we are mobilizing our supporters and joining them with the millions that the MDC already has, so that we get to an election turnout that is way above 70%, maybe 85%. And that will make it very difficult for them to compromise the electoral outcome.
Nelson Chamisa wants to take his petition to SADC Chair President Cyril Ramaphosa, and he says more marches will be held in Zimbabwe until the government hears that without reforms there will be no elections. Last week, President Emmerson Mnangagwa emphasized his commitment to free and fair elections.
No violence. We want our elections to be free of violence. I plead with you. It's more important, it's more powerful for us to be peaceful. It's more powerful. It means we are mature, and ZANU-PF is mature. We must preach love. We must preach unity. People are allowed to differ. You must allow your brother, your sister to differ with you, but never be violent because your sister is different with you.
Elections in Zimbabwe are scheduled to take place on the 30th of July. Ntakwana Ngatani, SABC News.
Earlier we spoke to our foreign editor Sophie Mokoena about Zimbabwe's preparedness ahead of the much-awaited polls.
It depends who you speak to. When you speak to the ruling party, ZANU-PF, they will indicate that they are ready, and the Electoral Commission is saying the same thing, that the institution is ready. Now the problem is the opposition. The opposition parties are not happy. You saw them today taking to the streets, and thousands turned up. They raised quite a number of issues. Among those issues, the independent external audit of voters' roll, complaining that they want to ensure that whoever is in that voters' roll is indeed legible to vote. The military, the involvement of the military. Second, the third issue, which is also very challenging for the country, they are complaining that during campaigning they see soldiers all over the country. And also they are demanding equal coverage from the state media, the state broadcaster.
One of the reports, although unverified, are to the effect that the former President Robert Mugabe seems to be supporting the MDC leader Nelson Chamisa as a build-up to the elections. Could this be his political comeback, or is it simply shooting from the hip?
You would recall when I spoke to former President Mugabe in Harare, he indicated that there's no way he can make a political comeback, but he indicated that if there is a party that stands for what he believes in, he is likely to support that party. So you'd recall also I spoke to Chamisa. He also indicated that he believes that for the first time, former President Robert Mugabe is going to vote for the opposition. And he was confident that former President Mugabe will vote for MDC. But one is kind of not so sure, because you'd recall the relationship between MDC and former President Mugabe was very, very hostile, very frosty. And when I spoke to him, he indicated that there's a new party, NFP, and those who started that party seemingly are the people who are very close to him, people who are very loyal to him. Some are inside the country in Zimbabwe, others in exile. And perhaps that's the party one can think of in terms of if President Mugabe decides not to vote for ZANU-PF. And ZANU-PF, I heard rumors that President Mnangagwa is trying to engage former President Mugabe. Therefore, let's wait and see.
Wait and see, we will. And I suppose that President Emmerson Mnangagwa won't have it easy. I mean, with the Joyce Mujuru party gaining traction, with Nelson Chamisa support swelling by the day, he certainly won't have it easy come the July the 30th.
Well, the honeymoon is over. Indeed, Zimbabweans wanted change. Thanks to the military, they did experience that change, and President Mnangagwa became a head of state. But now it's all about the interest of people in terms of service delivery. You know very well that the country is battling economically. People don't have jobs. People are hungry. You know, it's a struggle. Therefore, it's all about delivery this time around. And many people are saying that President Mnangagwa was part of President Mugabe's administration. Therefore, questions are being raised. Now, the other issue is that you have those breakaway parties. You've indicated that former Vice President Joyce Mujuru is campaigning. We saw her weekend. I indicated to you the newly formed party, NFP, where you have many of those who were supporting former President Robert Mugabe. Therefore, it's not as easy as all that.
And there's also talks, or rather there is hope, that this current election will be free and fair with the involvement of Western observers. What, in your view, then, is free and fair? Just because the previous elections, the Western observers were not there, the elections were not free and fair? What, in your view, is...
It's not about observers or monitors being in the country to observe or to monitor the election. It takes a lot of effort to ensure that the climate is conducive, starting with campaigning, how the Electoral Commission or the body that deals with elections in a particular country, how it conducts itself. Therefore, it's not as easy as all that. It's not about on the day when one is going to the voting station. It's all about campaigning as well. The environment must be conducive for people to be able to exercise their rights freely. Therefore, it's not about the day on which people are going to the polls, but it starts much earlier.
Surely Zimbabwe will now in bed with the Western countries if indeed the elections are free and fair. Is that a possibility?
I don't think Zimbabwe is in bed with the Western countries. What Mnangagwa is up to is to ensure that he's able to address the problem of the economy, and he really has to work very hard to ensure that the economy is revived, and therefore the international community must play a role to assist Zimbabwe. It is for that reason you see him trying to be very warm to the international community, and it looks like some countries are willing to assist him.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says he's certain that the people of Western Sahara will eventually get self-determination and be free.
Ramaphosa says South Africa stands side by side with the Sahrawi people in their quest to free themselves from occupation by Morocco.